Shalom. First off, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Baharakadash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and elders of GMS who have taught us this word and teach us this word today. And I want to give a salutation unto the elect of the nation of Israel. This is Brother Yataz Akbar with the GMS Nebraska camp. This is GMS Endeavor. And in this lesson, what I want to get into is a update in news and prophecy, as of June 23rd of 2025. In this lesson, just getting into the latest update within the so-called war, or the war in the so-called Middle East, and before we get this, I want to just grab a precept, because what's going on in the world today, the scriptures tell us about these things, through prophecy. We know that these things would take place because of the prophecies that's in the Holy Scriptures. We can go to Matthew chapter 24, verse 6, which, these are words spoken by Yahweh Shai, our Lord. It says, "And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled. For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet." Now, through this chapter, we are getting different signs of the end times. We're getting different signs of what we would see before our salvation, what signs will lead up to our salvation. And here it says that we're going to see wars and rumors of wars, which we see going on right now, with what was happening with Israel and Iran. Those are wars and rumors of wars. But that very conflict, ultimately is going to lead to World War III, which is going to lead to the destruction of Babylon the Great, which is America, and the salvation of the elect of the nation of Israel. But like it says, "See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet." So there's going to be conflicts that happen. There's going to be, steps forward in prophecy, but there's still more things that have to happen before we get to the end of the end. And so that's what I want to get into today in this video, to show the latest update, but to also show that, just because this conflict is going on over there right now doesn't mean that, we're gonna, be out of here tomorrow. There's still more things that have to happen, such as, and most importantly, the prophecy of the MOTB that we read about in Revelation chapter 13. And the peak of World War III isn't going to come until that prophecy comes to pass first. So what we can expect from this conflict that's going on right now, between Israel and Iran, between America and Iran, there's going to be a level of, things kind of cooling down before we get to the stage of prophecy that we read about in Ezekiel chapter 38, where Russia is going to get involved and be a guard unto Iran. But let's read on in this verse. It says, "For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows." So we have to look out for these things within the news and tie them to what's happening in the scriptures, which is going to give us, signs of, how close we are to prophecy, which, we are very close. But again, we're not at the end of the end yet. So let's get into this article from End Time Headlines, titled "Iran Launches Missile Attacks on U.S. Bases in Qatar and Iraq." Now let's get into it. It says, then this is from June 23rd. It says, "Iran launched missile attacks targeting U.S. military bases in Qatar and Iraq, escalating tensions in the Middle East following U.S. airstrikes on Iranian nuclear facilities over the weekend." As we were saying, after those attacks, after those airstrikes on those nuclear facilities in Iran, we could expect a response from, Iran, or Iran, just the proper pronunciation, however, tomato, but we could expect a response from Iran, and this was their response. Now, as we read into this article, we're going to see that this response from Iran isn't as escalatory as it would seem to be from the title, and that's going to become more apparent as we read on. So let's read. It says, the attacks confirmed by multiple sources, including the Associated Press, were described by Iran as a direct response to what it called America's aggression. It says, according to reports, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or the IRGC, fired at least 10 missiles at the El Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the largest U.S. military installation in the Middle East, and one missile in the Ain al-Assad base in Iraq. It says, explosions were heard across Doha, Qatar's capital, as Qatari air defenses intercepted the missiles, preventing any casualties or significant damage. So, as it says here, it says that, the Qatari air defenses intercepted the missiles, preventing any casualties or significant damage. So these bases that Iran targeted, they were U.S. bases, but there was no significant damage and the missiles were intercepted. Now, it's going to say it later on in this article, but I'll say it right now. The reason for that is because Iran basically communicated with Qatar, with these U.S. bases in advance, to let them know that they were going to send out this attack. The reason being is because this attack was more posturing. It was more to show that Iran isn't backing down, but at the same time, they aren't going full force ahead and trying to escalate any further than where it needs to be right now. For example, if Iran genuinely wanted this war to escalate to a higher level, they would have sent a heavier attack. They would have tried to destroy this U.S. airbase. They wouldn't have let them know in advance, hey, we're about to, send this attack out there. The purpose of why they did that is so that, the citizens of Iran could see that Iran isn't just laying down, and to basically, is more so a warning than a genuine failed attack. So let's read on. It says, Qatar's foreign ministry condemned the attack as a flagrant violation of its sovereignty in airspace, asserting its right to respond directly under international law. Let's see. Okay, here, this is good. It says, Iran's Supreme National Security Council stated that the number of missiles launched matched the number of bombs used by the U.S. in its strikes on Iran's nuclear sites, signaling a possible intent to de-escalate after the symbolic retaliation. And right here, this is a good phrase that they use. This was a symbolic retaliation, because I went to ChatGPT to ask the question, or Grok to ask the question, why, like what was the insights of, why Iran chose to do this attack like this? Was this a failed attack? Was this supposed to be symbolic? And in conclusion, what Grok said back was the attack was primarily a symbolic message designed to project strength and satisfy domestic and regional audiences while avoiding a broader conflict. It was not a failed attack, giving the deliberate precautions, nor purely a de-escalation signal, as it carried a warning of further retaliation if provoked. It says, instead, it was a strategic act to restore deterrence and save face after U.S. strikes while keeping diplomatic channels open. It says this operation's choreography, advanced warnings, proportional scale, and minimal damage aligns with Iran's historical playbook of calibrated responses. So this was expected, from this stage that we're in prophecy, because like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, based off of scripture, Matthew 24:6, and ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, see that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. It's understandable that Iran's response wasn't really nothing serious, because there's still more that has to happen and develop before we get to a major response from Iran or a partner of Iran. Now we know, according to prophecy, that eventually we will get a response of that level, because when we go to 2nd Ezra chapter 15 and verse 30, it tells us that. Let's go to 2nd Ezra chapter 15 and we'll start at verse 29. It says, where the nations of the dragons of Arabia shall come out with many chariots, and the multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon earth, that all they which hear them may fear and tremble. Also the Carmanians, raging in wrath, shall go forth as the wild boars of the woods. So the Carmanians are those Iranians. It says that the dragons of Arabia are going to come out with their army. There's going to be a higher scale attack from these nations over there in due time, because the scriptures tell us that this is going to happen. When we read on, it says, and with great power shall they come and join battle with them, and shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians. And then shall the dragons have the upper hand, remembering their nature, which is going back to Ishmael, who are the modern day Arabians. It says that they're going to remember their nature, because Ishmael was a wild man, according to the scriptures. It says, and if they shall turn themselves, conspiring together in great power to persecute them. So there's going to be a larger scale of attack from these nations, according to prophecy, but that time is not yet. The reason being, like I mentioned before, prophecies are going to come to pass within their due process of when they have to come to pass. As we read in 2 Ezra chapter 4, verse 37, by measure hath he measured the times, and by number hath he numbered the times, and he doth not move nor stir them until the said measure be fulfilled. And so everything has to happen within this due process. The Lord isn't going to do one prophecy out of order before the next prophecy comes to pass. He's not going to rush in anything. Everything is going to happen how it's supposed to. Now, something else in the news, I'm going to play this this video that was posted by one of the brothers. I'm not sure which brother or elder it may be, but it's from the YouTube channel Arrows of Indignation 144. So I'm going to go ahead and play that right now.
Officials are issuing warnings of possible retaliatory attacks right here at home. Tom Winter joins me tonight. Tom, we just got a new warning in from the State Department. What's it saying?
Right, just as we're coming on the air, the State Department warning all U.S. citizens abroad about potential threats, acknowledging the situation in Iran and the Middle East. Here at home, it's kind of a two-pronged threat, the physical and the cyber. And tonight, law enforcement agencies in multiple cities have stepped up their presence at sensitive sites like houses of worship, cultural centers, and diplomatic sites. The goal is to stop someone who is angered by the war in the Middle East from conducting an attack here. They're also looking for cyber attacks, which could temporarily take a website offline or deface a site. And then there's the concern about people backed by Iran who could already be here. A sleeper cell? Well, in the last several years, law enforcement has charged multiple people in a range of plots tied to Iran, from an attempted assassination on then President-elect Trump to a potential attack against an Iranian activist and journalist here in New York City. It's all on law enforcement's radar.
For this, as I watched cable news all day today, it said on the bottom of the screen, does Iran have sleeper cells, ? And I thought to myself, it would be more shocking if they didn't have people that they'd infiltrated over the southern border in the past 4 years than if they did.
Well, thank you for having me, Leland, and you're absolutely right. I don't even understand why this is a question. I hate to be so blunt, but that's how I feel about it. They have sleeper cells here. They have, quite frankly, for decades. I don't actually think that this is new. I think we may have more of an influx, right, that we're discussing, but this isn't new. They're here. They have been here. They are just waiting for the right moment, and the fact that we're curious and questioning as to whether or not they're here is actually very shocking to me.
All right, so the Ayatollah, America will suffer if America gets involved in the war. Take a listen.
America's intervention in this matter is 100% to their detriment. What they will suffer in this regard is much greater than what Iran may suffer. The damage America will suffer if it makes a military intervention in this field will undoubtedly be irreparable.
What does a sleeper cell attack look like? Is this another 9/11 or something different?
I think it could be a combination. I actually don't think it's going to look like a 9/11 type attack, a very complex attack. That's really what 9/11 was. It required a lot of money, a lot of financing, and a lot of planning. I don't think that's what we're going to see here because obviously the world has changed, right, in the last 25 years. And there's been a lot of success in these kind of lone wolf or inspired by attacks. And so I think they're going to be kind of more lone wolf style. I also think that we could be looking at attacks to our critical infrastructure as well that we are not expecting. So I think it's going to look less like a 9/11 style attack, sort of shock and awe, if you will, and more in an unsuspecting way. And I actually am very concerned about our critical infrastructure.
You think about July 4th coming up, that would be target number one. Every city and town in America has gatherings, and we know what can happen at big gatherings. History of sleeper cells in the United States. Obviously, the Soviet Union was some of the best at having their illegals. The World Trade Center bombing, the Millennial Plot, September 11th, Detroit sleeper cell, Disneyland plot, Hezbollah operative arrests. How do you find, and I hate to use the sort of cliche, I don't think you're looking for a needle in a haystack. You're looking for a needle in a hay field or hay barn, right?
You're absolutely right. It's near impossible to find these individuals because, as you mentioned before, some of them did not enter the U.S. legally, but some of them actually are homegrown, right? So we have this combination that makes it incredibly difficult to identify individuals that might not even come up on our radar. I mean, even if you go back as far as to September 11th, right? Those individuals had actually entered the U.S. legally. Had we checked their visas properly, obviously we would have known because we know that now. But that's the difficult part of all of this. They lead these seemingly normal lives, right? Drawing no attention to themselves whatsoever. But they have to get messages in some way. They have to get a signal in some way. And that's where I'm hoping they will slip up and we will ultimately catch them.
So as you heard in the video, there's reports of Iranian sleeper cells in the country right now. Now this could be one of two things. The first thing that this whole situation could be with the sleeper cells, as you seen with the brother's title, it wasn't the whole thing, but you could see, the brother was essentially insinuating that that this is the setup for a false flag attack. And we know, hey, let's grab 2 Corinthians. Let's grab 2 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 8. Salakia, 13, verse... Dang, I'm doing bad with the precepts today, Salakia. Salakia, bear with me. 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 11. It says, lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. We know how Esau likes to roll. We look at 9/11, for example, where that was an inside job. But Esau set it up to deceive the masses, to make it seem like that was a foreign attack, on American soil, so that Esau could carry out with his ulterior motives. Now, what this could very well be is that these sleeper cells, there could be some type of attack that happens in the U.S., that Esau would blame on these Iranian sleeper cells, that it's really a false flag attack, an inside job, to where, like they were mentioning at the end of that video, how would we be able to know who are sleeper cells within, the vastness of the U.S.? It's like finding a needle in, in a haystack, or they said more than a haystack. It'd be very difficult. What this could be is that, this could be reasoning to push the MOTB. Why? Because when you push that MOTB, it's not just, the scriptures tell us about how, you won't be able to buy or sell without the MOTB, like we read about in Revelation chapter 13, but it's bigger than just buying and selling. The MOTB is going to be a tracking device. It's going to be your identification. And this could be reasoning for Esau to push the system of the MOTB, of more surveillance, of a larger crackdown on making sure that every single person in the U.S. is identified, and that's ultimately going to lead to the MOTB. And so that could be what Esau is doing when it comes to the sleeper cell situation. Or it could very well be that there are Iranian sleeper cells in the U.S. Reason why I say that is because when we look at the open borders during the Biden administration, that wasn't just the Northern Kingdom that was coming in through the open borders. These were people from all different types of nations, and there were reports of Russian sleeper cells that slipped through the cracks. There is and we're seeing reports of the Iranian sleeper cells. there could be, Iranian sleeper cells that's waiting on, word from, their home country to carry out some type of attack. And either way, we know that Esau operates off of order ab chaos, order out of chaos, and whether it's a fabricated attack or an authentic attack, Esau is going to come in afterward and bring some sort of solution that is in line with his agenda that the people are going to want, but hey, when we get into prophecy, reason why this could be an authentic situation with Iranian sleeper cells or sleeper cells of any nation that are in the U.S. that are waiting to carry out an attack. We know in Isaiah chapter 47 verse 1, it says, "Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the throne. There is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. Take the millstone and grind meal, uncover thy locks, make bare the leg, uncover the thigh, pass over the rivers. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered, yea, thy shame shall be seen." And what this is going into is how, America has never been touched by, foreign troops on American soil. For example, how the U.S. sends their troops over to foreign countries and sends boots on the ground. Well, the U.S. hasn't seen that. The U.S. hasn't seen an attack from a foreign enemy. And while this is ultimately going to be a straight up and down, enemy troops being sent over here, wartime escalation, it could be that, this could, foreign sleeper cells waking up and doing some sort of attack on U.S. soil falls in line with this prophecy as well, which is showing that, that could be the case, that those sleeper cells could be authentic, that there could be an actual attack going on, or that, eventually happens based off of that. Speaking as a man, my opinion, I believe that this whole sleeper cell narrative is, Esau's witchcraft and sorcery, that he's going to play on the people to, cause some sort of false flag attack, because that's how Esau rolls. He uses deception. That's just his style. So Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. That's all I wanted to get into in this video. There's a lot going on right now, as the scriptures say in Romans chapter 13 verse 11, and that knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we believed. Even though we not at the end of the end yet, we still closer to the end than we've ever been before. We're seeing the prophecy of the least of the flock, drawing them out, playing out in real time based off of Israel's actions, and America getting involved in any fashion within this war. That's the least of the flock, drawing them out, and we just have to wait for further escalations for more prophecy to come to pass, but trust and believe, the word of the Lord shall not go out void. These scriptures are faithful and true, and we're going to see these things come to pass, even if there are, breaks, or, breaks, so to speak, or, cooling down in prophecy. We're going to see these things come to pass, so Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. Once again, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Baharachak Kodash. I'm going to give double honors to the apostles and elders of GMS, and a salutation unto the elect. Shalom.